Hi everybody. Good evening. I finished my stream about an hour or two ago. Um, so I'm gonna go off of a thing that I saw that's more of a reaction. Um, Now I thought about talking about it a while back, and it's called virtue signaling. Now, I noticed this a lot with very alt-right or very conservative who are malicious about it because they think that by having that so-called fake friend who has a disability or a fake friend who is a Jew, who is gay, Jewish, whichever, they can escape the whole fact that they're being prejudiced. Now, back when I believe I was in junior high when this happened. I could be wrong. It could be in my freshman year of high school. Now, I made a friend, being the operative word. She wasn't exactly much of a friend, considering her behavior and her attitude toward the learning disabled community was less than stellar. Let me put it that way. Her name doesn't really matter. Let's just call her Jody, okay? Just to make it a little more different. Jody would talk to me at the in the learning disabled rooms. She would volunteer. She actually was not quite a very good person, not at all. Jody just had that attitude, and she virtue signaled a lot, mostly with, "Oh, I have a friend who's learning disabled," and she'd put her arm around me and say, "This is her." And you could tell by her attitude that she didn't really want to be my friend, but she said she was. And it was kind of degrading because in the learning disabled community, we're taught to appease everybody, even if we don't like the person, because we don't want drama. Unfortunately, when I went to a different school, Jody was stuck at that other school. So she didn't get to see me, and of course, her attitude was no better. I made a whole new slew of friends, and one day, Jody found me at the mall. I was hanging out with some girls who were from the school I went to, and she was talking to one of the girls, and of course, the conversation went, "Oh, I'm friends with," um, we'll just use my persona. "I'm friends with Electro." My friend picked up on it pretty quickly, and she says, "No, you're not." Of course, Jody, being Jody, said, "Yes, I am." "Hey, Electro, defend me here." I kind of stayed quiet. I didn't really want my friend, who, well, I'll just call Colleen. Colleen said, "No, you're not her friend because you don't accept who she is." "Oh, yes, I do. I know she's learning disabled and of course the whole and thing." So, yeah, that was virtue signaling in its own right because Jody wanted to show she was sympathetic to the learning disabled community when she wasn't. Now, in another thing I've noticed with a lot of this, it is mostly aimed not just at the LGBTQ, it's aimed mostly at the trans community. Now, I have many friends who are trans. I have so many friends that are trans, I can't name them all. And someone said that was virtue signaling. Well, it isn't virtue signaling when it's the truth. And one of my trans friends saw the tweet that I had made, and of course, her response was, she tweeted back, "Yeah, I'm her friend. Got a problem?" No, the person shut up right then and there. Because the truth is, I wasn't virtue signaling because I do have friends who are trans. They are awesome people. They're people that I've known before they transitioned. I mean, one of them I knew by their real name, by their dead name. I'm not going to dead name them, no. And when she transitioned, she expected a bit of a backlash. And I sat there after she transitioned and said, "So, are we going to go out or not?" And she's like, "What?" "Well, we both know we need to go shopping. We both know our socks are not going to fix themselves, and we desperately need to get out of this and just let our hair down." Of course, this person, being who she is, said, "Oh, so it's that simple, huh?" And I go, "Hun, if I can accept you for being gay, not a problem here. If I can accept you for being transgender, we don't have a problem here. Let's go do something we both enjoy, that we've enjoyed for years. Let's go to a bookstore, talk about books, and still be friends." Because she learned the hard way. I'm like the barnacle you can't get rid of. I'm not going to leave you because of one thing that has happened in your life. That is not virtue signaling. That is being a friend. So the fact that someone called me a virtue signaler over the fact that I had trans friends, that was kind of dumb. But when I see alt-right and Republicans or conservatives, there are some Republicans that do have gay friends, just so you know. Some of them are actually pretty decent people, and some of them are in Republican in name alone, but they generally don't vote the same way. They prefer the old ways where Republicans actually stuck to their word. Unfortunately, it hasn't been that way in a very long time. So, yeah, some of the trans people I've met have been friends of mine for decades. But when I see the alt-right and the conservatives saying, "I have friends who are," and they'll understand the way I vote and the way I think, they literally don't really care about the people that they're friends with. Because if they really did care, wouldn't they think about that person when they voted? Or how it's going to affect their friend's life after the vote? Because unfortunately, I've seen that negative repercussion firsthand. In fact, I think my mother has seen it. Because back in the 1980s, my mother fought tooth and nail for ADA laws to be honored. Because in some areas and some schools, people refused to honor it. Like, there were some schools that the ramps to get in for the disabled students were in the back of the school. The kids had to go all the way around and enter through the back end of the school just to get to class. Or some of the areas of the school where the elevators were out. So the kids who had classes at the bottom of the building couldn't get to class. And there were some schools that refused to allow kids with wheelchairs to use or have access to the elevators, because that was for the teachers and aides only. Or AV only, which makes not a whole lot of sense. So when that was going on, my mom fought tooth and nail. But there were people that she had met who didn't think that way. They thought that kids with disabilities didn't belong there. They belonged in special schools. And that was not a fair thing for these kids, especially me, the learning disabled child, who had friends who were in wheelchairs or who were hearing impaired or were autistic and had a lot of motor issues, or kids with cerebral palsy, or anything that I had been around in the special ed department that I had been exposed to. These are people that I had to go to school with, that I saw day in, day out when I went to my tutoring sessions. These were kids that were my friends. And it wasn't fair to them that they had to suffer all through that just to get to class. I mean, the worst of it, and this is the worst part. One day an elevator was out and a teacher's aide had to wheel this one kid all the way around because if she went by the office, she would have gotten in trouble. So she had to go down a dangerous hill with a kid in a wheelchair, a dangerous grass hill, just to get to the special ed room, which was on the bottom floor. When back in, I believe, 1986, no, 86 or 87, the special ed department was right next to the first grade. The first grade pod. No luck there. They decided to change it all. Because I remember my tutoring sessions for reading and voice there, and yes, I went to speech therapy, so that was because I didn't talk for a while because I had a lisp. And it kind of, when I got braces, the lisp went away. So that's the explanation there. But when the virtue signaling came on, my mother got really offended because these were ladies that said, oh, well, my daughter's friends with such and such, and she's in a wheelchair and she seems just fine. No, she's not. I mean, the teacher's aide almost broke her ankle bringing a wheelchair down with a student. Both her and the student almost got hurt because of the way the school was run. And this was a mountain school. This was up in Evergreen. So you can imagine that big issue. So when you think about the virtue signaling going on that end, you want to go, okay, buddy. I'm like, no, that's not okay. That's a terrible thing to do. And that was back in the 80s. In the 90s, when I was a teenager, things changed quite a bit because I went from one school where it was severely overcrowded, and I had a teacher who penalized women for penalized female students who needed to use the bathroom because they had their period. I mean, literally, he did that, and I found out like in 2002 he got fired because a couple boys in the class got so tired of him doing that they actually risked getting suspended by showing the grade book to the principal. And the only reason I knew that is because I was still friends with two of the boys, and I had known them since junior high. So yeah, they were within their right to do that. That was pretty funny. And yes, it cost the guy the job, but you know what? It also made the school aware of the problems women were having with the rules. So what they would do is they would make the passing period, the passing time, they extended it by 5 minutes. So instead of like a 5-minute passing period, it turned into a 10-minute one, so that teachers, female teachers and female students could use the bathroom. Same with any student that needed to use the bathroom during their time of the month. They could go in, get out, and move along, and not be penalized for doing that. And even then, even if you went over that, you still wouldn't be penalized. Because I had teachers who were female that were still going through their menstrual cycle, and they Literally did not understand why it had to be 5 minutes in a passing period. Never understood that one. But again, the decisions that are coming across right now are fundamentally dumb. And I've been like reading Twitter, doing my own research on this, and unfortunately, the virtue signaling that I experienced back as a teenager and a child are still there, and it freaking pisses me off because virtue signaling really does hurt the communities that some people are intending to help. Now, as an a learning disabled who had it happen, I get really pissed off when I get the alt-right people going, "Oh, I had a," and then they list off some person with dyslexia. Okay, yeah, that's pretty damn common, but what spectrum of dyslexia? What how severe? Because there's different severities of dyslexia. I know people who have dyscalculia, which is a form of dyslexia that involves numbers. I have that. I am horrible with numbers. I have mixed numbers up. I have flipped numbers. I have, you name it. I can't do math. I have to have a freaking calculator with me, and it pisses me off. But also, it it doesn't really help the community when you have these virtue signaling groups that think it's okay to do that. And when they're called out on it, they act like the victim, and we're basically victim blaming. And it's not the case. Okay? Just so you know, they're not the victims here. And the victims are generally the community that they are in. So what brought this on was when I was watching somebody kind of tear apart a Prager U Kids video where a character named Lola is talking about how she's friends with a girl in a wheelchair, and that a bunch of girls were making fun of her for being in the wheelchair, and that people were protesting the school having an unfair, not accommodating. The problem is PragerU has this tendency to virtue signal, and it drives you nuts because they use that as a sort of driving thing for their lessons, and half of their stuff doesn't even pertain to it. So when you look at it, I don't think Lola would be friends with a girl in a wheelchair, or a person who's deaf, or a person who's blind. I had to explain that once to a person that this is how I explained it, because the person who virtue signaled me, Jody, she literally thought my learning disability was a virus, that if she prayed hard enough, I would be cured. I don't think that works that way, do you? No. No, I explained it to her, and then she stopped. She stopped virtue signaling. She stopped talking to me entirely because I pointed out she was wrong. And I don't feel bad for it. So if you are in any way, shape, or form dealing with that virtue signaling or that kind of problem, do yourself a favor and back up and look at what's going on. Same with people who are being virtue signaled. If you are having that happen to you, and the person is gaslighting you by saying, "Yes, I'm your friend, blah, blah, blah," back up, take a breath, and walk away from them. They're not worth your effort, and they're not worth your time. Because that whole problem is, it's an institutionalized hatred of being othered. And they would rather say, "Hey, I'm friends with such and such," than actually looking at reality. With that being said, I am going to shut down for the night, but thank you for listening. If you've had a virtue signal thing like that happen, mention it down below. Tell me about your half of it and how freaking dumb it sounds, because it isn't just happening to me. It happens to anyone. It could happen to anybody, really. Um, it could happen to the LGBTQ AI plus. It could happen to the learning disabled community. It could happen to the deaf, the blind. I mean, the autistic community is a big one. Dyslexic is a big one, but it is not funny. It's really harmful to the communities that are affected, because it makes their struggle and their right to exist so much harder. And best way to handle virtue signaling is to walk away from it. Don't give the person the time of day. Don't even enlighten them, because it they're never going to learn. So that's my advice. Take it or leave it. If you've had virtue signaling done to you, definitely tell me about it, because it's something that's very real and very wrong. And having it done to myself and having been accused of it, even though I have friends that are definitely going to come to my aid and who are trans and who are gay, who are lesbians, who are whatever. When you actually tell the truth and you say, yes, I have these friends, you're not virtue signaling. You're actually saying, I'm going to be their friend no matter what. Because guess what? That's the way I am. So, thumbs up. Have a nice night. This is Electrophonic. I am signing out. Talk to you later.